And welcome to the Actual Astronomy Podcast, the podcast by amateur astronomers for amateur astronomers. I am Chris, and joining me is Shane. How are you this afternoon, Shane?
I'm doing well, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing well. We are two amateur astronomers who do this podcast for visual astronomers just like us because we love to do it. That's basically it.
And like we've said too, normally you and I would just have these conversations. So why not record them and throw them out onto the internet?
Yeah, sounds good. So this is episode 46. We're going to do a first light review of the Skywatcher AZ GTI. That's a mount that I purchased over the past 4 months. It took a little while. And you're going to do a last light review, I think, of the Masuyama 35mm vintage eyepiece.
I am, yes. And you're becoming quite the expert on Skywatcher AZ mounts.
Yeah. Unintentionally so. So we did our first 365 Days of Astronomy podcast, and I think we had some nice positive feedback from that this week. That was pretty exciting.
Yeah, it was really... The concept of the Astronomy 365 podcast is pretty cool because like it's not like a dedicated group of people podcasting like you and me on this one. They're like kind of an aggregate of multiple astronomy podcasts. So they took ours and it's still our podcast and it shows up as actual astronomy, but it's fed through the Astronomy 365 feed, so all of their subscribers get to hear it. And it's a neat concept, and I'm glad we're a part of it.
Yeah, me too. In fact, I started listening to, that was one of the first podcasts I ever listened to back in I think it started around 2009 for the International Year of Astronomy. May have started just like maybe a few weeks prior to that, but I remember I was right in there listening to it from the very beginning, and I was pretty dedicated for many years to listening to that almost every day.
Oh wow! Yeah, because every day they release a new podcast or feature a new podcast from one of the many contributors.
Yeah, and I had some friends that had done, like a lot of people back in those days were doing just one-offs where people would get together, they would make one up, and they would send it out. But of course, as you and I know, podcasting back in those days was a little bit more challenging because we did our own, and there wasn't the sort of the automated feeding of your podcast out to different sources. You had to kind of do a little bit of coding there. I remember I had about 3 pages of notes and how to actually get these things up. And the recording part was so much fun. And then it was hours and hours of work afterwards.
Yeah. The infrastructure just really wasn't there at that time for podcasting.
So this is a lot better. Let's see. In their write-up, I thought it was interesting. They really noted that we are 2 Canadian amateur astronomers. And while this is accurate, I think we should, kind of like in full disclosure, our main dark sky observing site is literally 3 miles north of the Montana border. So
yeah, we're quite close to the U.S. at that point.
Yeah, we really are. So although yes, in fact, we are Canadian amateurs, we are literally observing on the doorstep of our friends to the south there. So I guess my caveat with that, if people are kind of imagining that we're way up in northern Canada somewhere, that is unfortunately not accurate, I suppose. The other thing is that we both traveled to under different circumstances than the current pandemic circumstances. Both have traveled extensively to the United States for vacations and such. So
yeah, definitely all over many states. Between us, I'm sure we've probably crossed a lot of them off the list.
Yeah, and I actually lived on the West Coast in the U.S. Off and on a couple times. So
oh, really?
kind of need to mention that as well. So yes, I'm a Canadian, but have spent some extended, not more than just vacation stays in the States, and have family and friends down there. So there is that. We're not just two guys that are living way up in northern Canada that have never traveled beyond our borders. So I want to make sure that was known. So my astronomy class officially now has a wait list, which I think is quite interesting. It's never had a wait list before.
Well, congratulations. That's a good thing.
Yeah, I think the Zoom virtual classroom, this has been a boon to my astronomy class. So as you know, like you come and have been a very kind guest presenter on many occasions. I think probably in maybe even half the classes on average. You probably noticed that the numbers were kind of getting down in the past year or so as well.
Yeah, like I think when I started, I would want to say that the class size was probably 15 to 20, and I think the
Yeah.
last time I presented there was 3 or 4.
Yeah, and although the class was larger, well, the last class that you and I did together was literally days before the World Health Organization announced the pandemic, and I think that was actually influencing the numbers at that time,
Yeah.
because when I kind of looked back at some of the I think the sort of notes I get from the students at the end of the classes, they were like, "Yeah, I wish I could have made it, but I stopped going out that week." So anyhow, there was that. But last night, hey, did you get out and observe the conjunction between Mars and the Moon last evening?
I sure did. Now, I did it just with my eyeballs, no
Okay.
telescope. But yeah, I couldn't believe, like, I knew they were going to be close, but until you actually see it, it's quite stunning. I was even surprised, again, knowing the measurement, I was still surprised at how close they were. It was a very nice view.
I thought it was amazing. I thought it was one of the best conjunctions I've seen. I had the telescope out on it, and was testing out the mount we're going to talk about in a moment, and had the 100 millimeter on it, and low power, my lowest power, widest field eyepiece, and showed my wife, and she's not really that into astronomy. She's a person who crochets, and that's her passion. But she was really blown away by seeing Mars and the Moon in the same field of view, and you could see so much detail on the Moon, and then you could see the Martian disk. Although at just 17 power, you couldn't really see any detail. But we did up the power, and the seeing last night was quite atrocious. It was pretty
Yeah.
horrendous.
Well, yeah, I was out earlier in the evening with a telescope looking at Jupiter and Saturn, and I would say last night was the worst seeing I've seen this year. So the telescope went back inside, and I just enjoyed the sky with my eyes for a little while.
Although one thing I think you probably noticed this as well, is that was some beautifully warm observing weather for September. We went out for a walk before, and it was 22 degrees, and came home and it was 24 degrees Celsius. So
Yeah, it was super warm. We went out for supper last night, and when we came back at around 8 p.m., I think it was still like 26 degrees Celsius, which
yeah,
this time of the year, it's quite nice.
yeah, and -3 tomorrow.
Yeah.
So, and that's no joke. That's the sort of the strange part about this place. I remember when I moved here, and we were having one of those days where it was 28, and I was looking in the forecast, and it said it was going to snow, and I was like, I'm like, I think the forecast is broken. It can't snow. It's like 28 degrees or whatever. It was 29 yesterday, and then yeah, apparently like tomorrow morning or something, it's going to be. In fact, I'm reading -4 now. Is what's in the forecast. So
Yeah, we harvested everything in the garden this weekend because of the upcoming frost.
yeah, and I mean that's just not like, I mean, where I'm from out east, like you get like so many touches of frost before it starts. Like it's a very gradual process. Whereas here, like one day it's 29, and then 2 days later, you'll be single digits, and you could be into the mid negative digits. And like the time we always reference going down to grasslands, where we were having a 20-degree day, and then we started observing, and it was -4 by sunset, and then it actually went to -20 that night. So 30-degree difference.
Yeah. If you don't like the weather, just wait a half an hour.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, this place is, and I've read this. It's something like it has the largest diurnal temperature difference, meaning the largest temperature difference between like your daytime high and your nighttime low of I think of anywhere in North America. And I mean, I say that it sounds crazy, but I think that's true, because I've been out at +38. I was observing with Mike one day in the grasslands, and it was +38. And when we get up the next morning, it was -3. So that's 41, 42, something like that. So
Yeah, there's some big swings, especially this time of the year, because it can still get warm during the day, but the nighttime definitely cools.
okay. So let's see. You turned around a 35 millimeter Masuyama. Shall we begin with your last light review?
Yeah, so we've talked a little bit about this eyepiece, I think on the last episode or a couple episodes ago. It's got such a, I wouldn't say cult following, but kind of online. Like on cloudy nights, if you search for the Masuyama 35 millimeter, there's all kinds of like super positive reviews and people praising this eyepiece like no other. Like it's one of
Yeah.
the greatest 1.25" wide field eyepieces money can buy.
Yeah, I mean, I was really excited when you bought it. I had looked forward to maybe trying it out.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that's not going to happen.
No. I probably could have kept it, I guess, for you to try it. But honestly, Chris, I don't think you would have liked it.
Really?
Yeah. So, um, where to start? Maybe I'll start with the eye relief. So it's advertised as 24 millimeters of eye relief, which is really good for
Yeah.
people that wear glasses like you and I.
Yeah. Yeah, it should be awesome for that.
But yeah, I couldn't see the field stop. I couldn't see the entire field of view because the top of the glass, the lens is recessed quite a bit into the eyepiece. I would say 7 or 8 millimeters, maybe, give or take 1 or 2 millimeters.
Oh.
So if it's 8, now you're down to 16 millimeters of eye relief. And typically people that wear glasses need around 20 millimeters to see the field
Yeah.
of view. And I couldn't get it all in.
Oh.
A, that was a disappointment.
Yeah.
And then B, this is what really killed it for me. And
Uh-oh.
I'm super sensitive to like crisp stars. Like I don't want aberrations. I don't want like the stars turning into seagulls at the edges of the field of view. And this eyepiece was sharp probably for the first 60% or so. But then the outer 30% of that field of view was just a slow degradation to the edge of
Really?
the stars. Yeah. So I like that. I have a hard time tolerating, especially
So what telescope were you using?
the Takahashi 76 DCU in
And
its
so
native
F7.
configuration.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, like it shouldn't have been like a real stress test on it.
No, that's really disappointing.
Yeah, so I decided to sell it. Well, and then a couple other factors that I'll layer on top of that.
It's
Number one,
extremely expensive.
well, it's expensive, but it's kind of a big eyepiece,
Yeah.
and it's a heavy eyepiece.
Ah.
So I also have a 24 millimeter panoptic in my eyepiece case. The panoptic beat it, in my opinion, in every category. So it was an easy decision for me to say, I've already got a better eyepiece than this that covers the wide field in 1.25". I will sell this one, and I did. So it's gone. Now I wonder, like, there is a part of me that's curious of, did I get one that somehow the lenses came out of alignment, or it was just a bad copy of it? Maybe because given all of the positive reports online, I was so surprised at the views that I had.
Yeah.
It just didn't live up in any form to what I was expecting.
Yeah, though, like, I mean, sometimes I do find that quite a bit is that, like, sometimes, like, well, the real world experience is a little bit different. Like, especially for, like, you and I observe in many ways the same, and we're really pushing the limits here and going, to the darkest places and really kind of putting a rather critical eye to things. So it might have been totally fine for somebody else. It's the same thing. Like, I know in some of the texts, some of the books that we've recommended, they'll even say, well, pretty much every eyepiece is more or less just as sharp in the center, which is true to a certain extent. But I think, like, you and I have done comparisons, like, you're coming off a comparison of the Pentax 5 millimeter XO and the TMB super monos, and I mean, so you're going from the absolute best of the best of the best, sharp all across the field of views, to anything else is going to seem murky, right?
Yeah. But like, even compared to the Panoptic, like there really was no comparison. I was really disappointed with this one.
Yeah. Well, TeleVue makes good eyepieces, right? I mean,
they do. Yeah.
That's the long and the short of it. I think they're probably making the most consistently good eyepieces. I think that's a pretty fair statement. to make.
Yeah, and I think if you want wide field and you want it to work in a range of different telescopes, like different focal length telescopes,
Hmm.
it's hard to beat Teleview. They'll work in f4 or 5 telescopes
Yeah,
and up, whereas
yeah,
not every eyepiece can work in fast telescopes without real degradation at the edges.
yeah. All right. Anything else to add on the 35 millimeter? That's the Masuyama that's gone to the actual astronomy black hole.
Yeah, we've cast it to the black hole. The only thing I'll say is I still have a curiosity to look through another one, just to see if the view is the same, or if I did end up with one that just was maybe a lemon.
Well, I think you should look for a 35 millimeter Celestron Ultima Halloween edition,
Hmm.
because they're supposed to be pseudo Masuyama, so they're essentially the same optics, but they don't look as recessed. Or let's see, there's 2 other kinds. There's the Bader Udaioscopic,
Yep.
and then there's also the,
The
let's see, the
Orion.
Orion
Yep.
Ultrascopic. I
Yep.
think raw, and then Park's Optical. I think it
Right.
was
Yeah.
Gold Series or something like that, was
Yeah.
also supposed to be pseudo Masuyama. So
Yeah, for
anyway,
sure. I will keep my eyes open, and if I can try one out, I certainly will.
yeah, because I always wanted to get one as well, because sort of ultimately I wanted to be able to run my tax in just 1.25 mode, um, just for lightweight and some other means like that.
Hmm.
So okay, you ready? You ready for my first light review? Finally, of the AZ GTI by Skywatcher.
I can't wait for this. I've been waiting, I think, since April or May for this review.
I ordered it, and this is, I'm not blaming anybody but myself on this. So I ordered it at the end of the first week or the middle of the second week of June, and I order much of my astronomy equipment from Stefan Broquet, who runs what's called Astronomy Plus, which is one of Canada's largest astronomy retailers. And he carries, I think, I could be wrong, but I believe it's about the widest selection of astronomy stuff in Canada. I've been buying from him for 20 years. Always had awesome experiences. But I was working and he knew I wanted this mount, and he wrote me and said, "Hey, I get these mounts coming in. Great." And I just pressed buy, click onto my workload. I was working on something very concentrated, and I clicked on the GTE instead of the GTI. It was my fault. I did it. I looked at the record. I had my bill of sale, the whole bit. It's all saying Chris bought this. Chris clicked. It's like there. So I kind of messed up, but I got the GTE. It took a long time, so I was really confused, because I was like, man, I thought Stefan said these were coming in, and then he had to go and get me one of these GTEs because it was harder to get. And in the end, we ended up swapping it out, and I got the GTI. But I was able to try the GTE first, and then I was able to try the GTI. So I think it's worth mentioning. They both work pretty similar, though. And what these are Skywatcher branded alt azimuth mounts. So they work just left, right, up, down. They're very simple mounts, but they also work electronically, and they will track the sky objects. Like if you want to look at the moon, it will track the moon across the sky, or deep sky objects or whatever. It also has go-to functionality. Go to Jupiter if you're on the moon, and it will slew across the sky and go to Jupiter. Now, the GTE, you have to use a hand paddle or the software on your iPhone to control it, one or the other, and that's how you slew it around the sky. And lots of people would be fine doing that. So you can either just press the buttons and slew it around the sky, or once you get a line, just tell it to go to objects, and you're going to observe those, and it will track them. I can't use a mount that way.
Yeah, when
Because
you get used to the manual controls, like manually
oh,
manipulating a mount, to have to wait for motors and things to slew around the sky is really frustrating.
yes. So I realize, and there's a bit of a warning, and although some people say it's fine, and it is a really good mount, it's very high quality. I gotta stress, Skywatcher really did an awesome job on this. Um, I just couldn't help it. I know I was going to start grabbing the telescope and just wanting to aim it at stuff as well. Like if your batteries run out or you're far from a plug, like you're out of luck, right? And I like the fact that with the GTI version, you can just point it wherever, and you can actually like switch the tracking off. Like, you know, this is a great mount for small, low power telescopes that can do planetary. And really my main goal for the mount was to be able to track and to do astronomical sketching of planets from home. But with the GTI, like I could take it out to dark sky sites, and if the planets are up, I can look at those and track, and we can all have a view of them under high power without having to recenter them too much, and then just switch off the tracking and just observe like usual how we do, and that really appealed to me, and it does work. But I will say this. I was very hesitant to send the GTE back, even though it wasn't exactly what I was looking for, because when I tested the tracking, it was awesome. And I was really concerned because I had read some reviews online where people had a little bit of difficulty with the tracking. Things would only track for a few minutes or whatever. And it was keeping things pretty close to the center for like a dozen minutes. And I was like, that's really good. Like without any real alignment, just basically here, track this object, and then boom, it was tracking it. And so I was a little bit nervous because I heard that sometimes with these mounts, they just didn't track as well. So I thought, well, geez, if I send this one back and it works essentially like really well, maybe I'll get one that didn't work as well. But I'm happy to report that the GTI that I got, I don't know, I've been using it a little bit more, and I think I'm just getting used to it, but it tracks at least as good, maybe just a hair better. So I think whatever problems maybe they had, because that's two samples kind of back to back of the GT and the GTI, and this one I can keep stuff in the field for about maybe 12 or 15 minutes of a high power, say over 100 power eyepiece. So that's pretty good without really focusing on centering it too much. And like we were observing the moon and Mars last night, as I said, through very low power, and like we had it on there for like 20 or 30 minutes under super low power wide field, and it felt like it never moved. Like it was really neat. It was going by a tree, and we could kind of see the tree moving by very slowly, and yeah, it was really awesome. So I'll get into this a little bit more. So I really like it so far. It's doing pretty much what I want it to do. Let's see. I'm just going to scroll down here. Oh, I got it with the 80 millimeter f5. I haven't tried that out yet. It's just a low power wide field chromat. I really like them. I already have one. I thought that I would get it. Maybe sometime somebody will want a telescope and not be too sure. I think the 80 millimeter f5 by Skywatcher or Mead, a variety of distributors sell these, and I think they're great, awesome little beginner telescopes. So I was able to get that for just an extra $30 when I bought it. But typically, I think you can get these with a 4 or 5 inch Masuyama, which I think if somebody was getting just into astronomy, that would be, and they want to look at planets, that would be a great setup to have this mount and a little 4 or 5 inch. I think there are 4 inch Masuyama with it. Would just be a beautiful little combination, because you could literally get this mount, that thing. I think it's like, maybe it's like $530 Canadian, and then you would just need to buy really like a couple eyepieces, and that's all you would need really to get going. Because typically, I think we found that with any kind of tracking mount or whatever, usually you need to buy a fair bit of stuff, or it's quite expensive. And I think they've really created an awesome mount that is very affordable.
Yeah, and that Maksudov, like especially the 5 inch, is a really capable telescope. I've owned two of them actually in the past.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The I was going to keep them as like my observatory telescope, just leave it outside in the dome. The issue I had was the dome would get so hot during the day that it really added to the cool down time required for the telescope at night. And those Maksudovs hold heat, like they do take a little while to acclimatize.
Yeah.
So I ended up selling them, but I had some great views of Saturn and Jupiter through those.
Cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run through some of the pros and cons of this mount. And before I do that, like overall, the mount is awesome. So in particular, I'm using it with my 60 millimeter f10 Takahashi refractor. And that mount with that telescope is absolutely perfect. Like, it is so good, it's ridiculous the way it works. Like, there's just nothing better. So my TAC is a very small and light telescope, and I have a heavy Takahashi Lapidus Alt-Az manual mount, but it has like slow motion controls, just their manual controls. But that telescope is way over mounted with that, and that can be a little bit of a problem. Like, it's harder to slew it around the sky, and you feel like you're really like heaving on the telescope to move it. I don't like that. And then I have a small portable Universal Astronomics Dwarf Star, which it works well on, especially for low to mid power. But once you get much over 100 power, you are kind of limited by that manual hand tracking and without any slow motion controls. But putting it on the GTI has just, it just works so well with that little telescope. And you can just change eyepieces very easily. It's very easily balanced. Let's see what else. So the main pro is that this is a very lightweight mount with a reasonably high weight capacity. So the mount itself only weighs about 3 pounds or 1.3 kilograms. It's a real one-handed mount. And I've actually added a couple things. I've added a set of batteries to it, just some lithium batteries, which weighs probably 3 or 4 ounces or something like that. And then I've also added another base to it. And then I'm leaving there's a little pier that comes with this mount when you buy the tripod and telescope option. And I'm leaving the head of that attached. So even with those things, cobbled onto it, it's still a one-handed mount, which I like, because I can grab the mount head and I can drop it on my tripod, which is outside, and then bring an eyepiece case outside with me. So it's nice. Usually, like the TAC Lapidus mount, so heavy, it's a two-handed mount. It's just barely a two-handed mount, but it's a two-handed mount. And the carrying capacity of this mount is 11 pounds. And so with my 60 millimeter TAC and some eyepieces, I'm under half the weight, and that works amazingly well. So I think, like, if you're using a 60 or like a 76, like your Takahashi, which would be pretty lightweight, I think that's where this mount is sort of perfectly aligned. Now, I'm also mounting my 100 millimeter DC Takahashi on it, and I've seen lots of people mounting Sky 90s. It is I think it's getting to the limit when you're doing that.
Yeah. The Sky 90s weigh a little bit more, and then the 100 DC is just a little longer. And when you factor in the weight of the rings, the dovetail, the diagonal, the eyepiece, you're probably getting close to that capacity.
Yeah, I think like you said, mostly I think it's the length versus the weight, because I loaded up my 60 and it's close to a 600 millimeter focal length, so I think it's just getting a little bit long as well. On the 2 nights I've headed out with the 100, I've headed out a couple more nights with the 60 than with the 100. It was really windy. Like last night was winds gusting to 50 kilometers an hour, 30 miles an hour. And they were hitting the house and I was on the deck, and they're hitting the sides of the deck, and there's like a bush hitting the deck, and that's a lot of vibration. But I did notice with the focusing, it did kind of move around a little bit. But, for tracking, we're at 105x, 15 minutes, still reasonably, close to the center of the field of view, like definitely still in the sweet spot. And also the manual mode is excellent. So this kind of surprised me. So even without the tracking, it's still a really good manual Alt-Az mount. I'm really, really impressed with it. It's pretty smooth motions in that. One little caveat I'll get to in a minute. And let's see, it's very quiet. That's the other thing. When I got the GTE, I was really frustrated at first because I didn't think it was tracking. So I was messing around with the app, and I was like, okay, you're on Jupiter. Like, why aren't you tracking? Why aren't you tracking? And so after 5 minutes, I'm like, wait a second, after 4 or 5 minutes, it should be out of the field of view. And it was still in the center of the field of view. So I was like, it's tracking. And then I put like super high power on. It was, you could, after, 5 or 6 minutes, you could see it was starting to get out of the field. But, you know, it tracks without any sound. There might be a little, there was one night it was really quiet. And I thought I could kind of hear it, like, but it's so quiet. And so for the, I think it's called the point and track feature, there's virtually no sound to it, which I quite like. That's nice.
That's pretty awesome. It's kind of like there's not a lot of options for a lightweight grab and go mount that tracks, but also has like manual alt-az capabilities like that. So it really sounds like a winner.
Yeah, I think it is. For the price, like I said, it's around $500 Canadian for everything, including a telescope. That is, and how good it is. I was really surprised when I got the first one, how good the quality is. There's a couple little caveats, but I think for somebody, especially for somebody who's just getting started, and maybe for whatever reason they don't want to go the 6, 8, or 10-inch Dobsonian route, which is typically what I think you and I recommend for people getting started. I think this is a really, really great way to go, because you can say, there's the moon. I'm going to point at the moon. I just want it to track. Like, that's what, in my experience, most people who are getting into this want to do. They want to say, I want to look at the planets. I want to find a few things, but they don't want to mess around that much. And you can take this mount out, and without any alignment, you just say, well, like, for example, people who take my class, I can show them how to find Jupiter, Saturn, all the planets, using a basic star chart. So they can find that. Most people can do this right off the top. But then, you get the telescope in that. And if it has like a more than a 1 or 2 step process for setting up the go to the alignment, it gets very frustrating for them very quick. In fact, going beyond that, for me, I find it a bit frustrating, because I would rather just point and have it track. Maybe that's just my own laziness or what, I don't know, but this mount will do that very perfectly. They've really done a great job.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Let's see. And it takes 8 AA batteries. Like I said, I think they'll last a long time. I've had it out 3 or 4 nights. I bought really good batteries. I think I mentioned those before. The Energizer lithium blue and silver ones. I used to work for an IoT company, and those are the ones that we use in our IoT devices. They last an amazingly long time. So probably buy another pack of those soon, just for when these ones conk out. But again, the great part is, say we're out observing, and like, I don't know, maybe there's 30 or 40 minutes left of tracking. I might get a couple nights of that out, because I'm only going to be using it on planets or certain objects. And I'll just flip the power in that off when I'm just like low power looking at other things, or, don't need the tracking for whatever reason. It's just really nice. So I think the batteries, I can get a lot longer out of the batteries than I originally thought. I thought that I'd be kind of turning it on, and then they would take more power, especially where I'm not using the go-to that much. I'm just going to point and track. But I'll say this, I did try the go-to last night. My wife really got mad at me, because I always, maybe we'll give somebody a hard time for using go-to, because I think people really should learn the Sky as well, even if they do have a go-to. But I want to test it out, make sure it worked. And it worked after I pointed at 2 different objects. So I had to go to Jupiter and Saturn, or maybe another object first, and do the point and track. And then after I did that, so I tried the go-to before that. It just really wouldn't do it. But then after I did that, I said, go to the moon and Mars. It would go to objects after that. So that's pretty impressive. That's pretty intuitive. So if you know a couple objects in the nighttime sky, you can just do the point and track on those. And then after you do that, you can just go and tell it to go to other things if you wish, if you want to use that functionality, but you don't have to. So this is an extremely flexible mount.
Yeah, that sounds really good. I can't wait to see it out, like with your 100 millimeter on it. I'd like to have a look through it and just see how it all handles and all of that stuff.
Yeah, let's see. So here's some cons, and I say cons-ish. Some of this is kind of nitpicky stuff, because I've been doing astronomy a long time, and I think this mount is totally acceptable out of the box. So any of this is sort of taken with that into account, and it's also well priced. I was actually looking at spending about $1,500 on a mount to have these same capabilities, and I think this is gonna pretty much do what I want it to do. Just need to kind of work out the wobbliness of the 100. Now I know lots of people using 100 millimeters and 90 millimeters on these, so I think I can do it. And I was observing. Typically I don't go observing when it's 30 miles an hour wind,
Yeah,
but I
it's
just
not
kind
ideal.
of I kind of wanted to test it out anyway and see. And yeah, I mean, I don't think anything's going to be that stable in those kind of conditions. All right, so some of the cons ish. Let's see. Number one is the tension knob on the sort of the altizimuth, sort of going around and around, not the altitude, the azimuth, is a little tight, and loosening it doesn't really seem to loosen it. Seems like this is a common complaint people have. And also the tension knob for that is on the far side of the telescope. So my understanding is that over time they've updated the software, and you now need to mount the telescope on the left versus the right, which is fine. I usually want to mount on the other side, but it's not really that big a deal, even for those of us that prefer it. Like I'm a goofy foot, right? So anyway, it doesn't really matter. But now the tension knob is on the far side. And so I think that is a little bit weak. And then even when you back it off, it seems pretty tight to move. And so don't like that, because it seems like you could be fighting some gears and we get some pretty cold weather. So what people do, and I bought this even before I got the mount, is it's called a Feisel, F-E-I-S-O-L PB-70 base. And this is this little, almost looks like a hockey puck, but it's only about 2/3 the size of a hockey puck there. I mean, we are Canadian, right? We can say this.
Yeah, has to come back to hockey.
Has to come back to hockey somehow. And it sits between the base of the mount and the top of the tripod. And it works beautifully. It dampens. It's got very smooth motions. You can put the tension knob wherever you want. I really like that. And it was pretty cheap. I think it was like $55 US to get. So there's that. I also think the tripod that came with it, little disappointed. I heard some people, like a lot of people use it and say, oh, it's not too bad, whatever. No, I just didn't really care for it. For a beginner, it's going to be great. Like really, it's decent, but like I couldn't get the legs all the same length. Somehow they're all off by anyway. And it has the screw lag. So I really like the knob tensioning to go up and down, because that works a lot better in the cold. I don't like the ones that just kind of screw and unscrew. That always seems like a recipe for disaster for me, because I can't tell, right? Like with the knobs, I can really feel them, grabbing purchase. But it seemed fine. I set up in the room with that, and then I took it off, and then I don't know if I'll use it. I was hoping I could use it for travel, and I may, because it's very lightweight. So I may just need to play around with it a little bit more. It did come with a little pillar. I think that's good. Though some people say you got to watch that it doesn't unscrew or whatever. But I think those people maybe aren't using the PB-70 base, and I think it's because the mount rotation in the azimuth is a little tight, and so it might cause that to unthread after a while. But I think that would take some working. When I first set it up on my Manfrotto, I played around with it in the living room for a while and kind of worked that out. I think that really isn't that big a problem, but you do need to get a different tripod. I have a Manfrotto O28B. I think you have the same.
Mine's I think a slightly earlier model. It's a Bogen 3046, but basically the identical tripod.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. Now, with the 60 millimeter a year telescope, this would be perfect. I think I need a slightly heavier tripod for the 100.
Yeah, although I could see that. I find even with my 76, especially with the Q extender in there, it's not quite as stable as I would like it.
Yeah, so kind of looking at new tripods. Maybe, I got to play around with it and see. I also have it on my deck. My deck is not that stable. It's stable enough to sit on and eat a hamburger. it's not stable enough for high power visual observing. At 17 power, it's great. At 170 power, it's a little shaky. Although that combination with the 60, I can run 171 power in the 60 millimeter, and it's perfect. It's great. It's fine. But down below, I have mulch. And one reason why I got all this mulch in my yard is so that I can set my tripods up and nice and flat. All right, so let's see. So you need a good aftermarket tripod, and also a lot of people are getting ADM dovetail clamp replacements, and I think I'm going to go that route too, because there's a locking screw that locks into your dovetail, and it just seems like a bit of a sketchy purchase on it.
Well, and that, going with a wider clamp can make a world of difference too on your stability. So, that might improve it enough that you don't feel the need to replace the tripod.
Yeah, and it's a pretty inexpensive upgrade. It's around $70, I think. So let's see. I'm not a big fan of using the iPhone at the telescope. Just bright screens and telescopes. Yeah. I bought a hand controller. It's a little bit more futzy to set up than I would have liked. And this is really getting nitpicky. I think the point and track feature, it's so good. And I think this is what a lot of people should be using with the mount, is I think that should be higher up in the menu. And I think that they should have better instructions for going to that and using it. Because I see a lot of people talking about getting the go-to and the tracking working on this mount. And I think that they should just try pointing it out a few objects they know, using the point and track, and then using the go-to feature. That's how, in my opinion, it should be described to work, because that works amazingly well without having to level and blah 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 and do all this other stuff. That just works really well. So I think that's more of an instructional thing. And you have to attach to the Wi-Fi each time, and I'm not sure how it would work where I might not have good cell service or other issues like where we go really far. So that's one of the other reasons why I have bought a hand controller.
But it has a built-in wireless access point, I think, right? Like your Wi-Fi like your phone connects directly to the mount using Wi-Fi, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I want to try it. I'm not sure how the technology works exactly. I think it's pulling some information from the phone, and I think my phone is pulling some information from the data. So I don't know what it's passing or not passing. I thought it was just kind of like a dummy Wi-Fi. In use, though, I'm not so sure. We'll have to see.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing too, using a phone in cold weather just doesn't work. Phones, when they get anywhere into single digits, they start to just turn off and not work. So that's when you need a hand controller for sure.
Yeah. And let's see. My recommendation for this mount, if somebody's a beginner, I think it's a great mount, and the telescope options I think are excellent. But I think if somebody's in my position, I would just go and buy the mount alone, and then maybe get the tripod pillar if you so wish. But the mount alone can be purchased, and you'd probably save maybe a couple $100 once it's all said in taxes and shipping and all that stuff in. Let's see. Yeah, I think going, and I can sort of do a bit of a roundup on this, the GTI versus the GTE. I definitely think it's worth spending the extra $50 Canadian to go with the GTI. I really like the point and track feature. And there's a lot of aftermarket stuff for this mount. So you can actually go, and if you can really grow with it. So if you're a beginner, you can get this. You can get the inexpensive tripod that comes with it, get the tripod extension. You could probably dabble in things like astrophotography, visual observing, find out what you like. And then you can, maybe if you want to do visual observing, you can really start beefing up the mount and get some of this other stuff we were talking about, like a clamp and the Feisel base, maybe some of the other stuff. And then if you want to go the astrophoto route, a lot of people are sticking with the tripod. They're able to get it working. I guess it is pretty stable. It's just a little low. I guess maybe it's my main criticism for it. And then it seemed a little difficult to adjust. I only tried it once. But you can buy all kinds of aftermarket things to turn it into a full EQ astro imaging platform. So the ability for this mount to run as a go-to mount for beginner, as a push, point, and track mount for intermediate or advanced observers with small telescopes, and the ability to transform into a really, high-end capable, tracking mount for the beginner astrophotographer, or a portable astrophotography platform for advanced astroimagers. There's nothing else out there that's like this that I've run across. I don't know about you, Shane, but
Nothing out of the box. Like you can get that Vixen Porta 2 mount. And then I think JMI sells some motors that you can install. So it becomes a push to tracking mount, but not a go-to.
yeah.
But
And when
like,
I look,
you're spending a lot more too.
yeah, that costs more. I see a lot of people that, those little tiny tracking mounts that you can just put on a tripod and put a camera head on.
Mhm.
And then, like, I see a lot of people have sold those and sold their smaller Altaz mounts and gone just to this mount, because when they want to do the visual astronomy, they can put their small telescopes on it. When they want to do that kind of astrophotography, they can put that on. They can turn it into an EQ mount. Just the flexibility of that. So anyway, I'll give it my rating. I give the Skywatcher AZ GTI mount 4 out of 5 stars.
Ooh, okay. Sounds like a winner.
I think it is a winner. Yeah, 100%. It does what I wanted it to do, and it does it very easily and quietly. You can get it, take it out of the box, put on a mount, put your batteries in, turn it on, point out an object, tell it to track it, and it does that without any fuss, really.
Well, that's really all you can ask for.
Yeah. So that's my review. That's my first light review. I think Skywatcher really hit it out of the park with that.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah. Do you have anything else to add, Shane?
That is all, my friend.
Okay. How can people stay in touch with us?
You can find us on Twitter at Actual Astronomy. Can email us. We are actualastronomy@gmail.com. You can leave feedback by putting reviews in on any of the podcast platforms that you use, and we will reply to everything that comes our way.
Thanks so much, Shane.
Thank you, and thanks everybody for supporting the podcast.